Throughout most of World of Warcraft, your character's power would continually increase, each patch and every new expansion. Eventually, though, it would seem that Blizzard would introduce systems that would last as long as the current expansion's life, and when removed, would take all the growth during those 2 years away. Welcome to the realm of borrowed power. Hello and welcome, I am Zabraxi. You know it's always really fun playing an RPG, spending 2 years of your life, spending hundreds, maybe thousands of hours trying to get new abilities, new unlocks, new gear, new power for your character, only to have it be stripped away by the end of it. But you know what? They're gonna give you something new again, but this time, it could be worse or better, you don't know. You'll never know until you continue to pay that sub fee, so why not just do it? Come on, it's like gambling, it's fun. Borrowed power, borrowed power, borrowed power. You can't spend more than 3, maybe 4, definitely not 5 seconds reading or watching any coverage on the state of Shadowlands without hearing that phrase slammed into your ear. Borrowed power. So if you don't know me very well, I'm a massive sucker for game design discussion. All this chatter of borrowed power really started to make me think of the concept as a whole. Is it good? Is it bad? Is there a balance to be struck? Do other games utilize this concept? Who am I getting this power from, and why must I give it back? Why can't they just get their own damn power and leave mine alone? All very reasonable questions, I'd say. Borrowed power, though. What is it? Well, what is power? The Great Founder Theory, written by Samo Burya, power specifically is, quote, the ability to realize your will, to affect the world in ways you desire, to achieve your goals. End quote. This definition easily fits within the realm of an RPG. In WoW, increasing your player power allows you to take on newer and more difficult challenges. In Guild Wars 2, achieving more power allows you to move further up the ranks of the fractal system. Power comes in all forms and as raw throughput, as economic status, and as social potential. Burya defines power as 2 specific possibilities, though: borrowed power and owned power. Quote, borrowed power is power that has been given to you and can be taken away by someone else. In the realms of game design, we can twist this into understanding that borrowed power is when the developers provide a system that rewards the player now, but will be removed at a later time. Despite you earning that power yourself, it's rented, so to speak. This new potential is not to stay, and you must turn it in at the next expansion purchase. Well, are there any good examples of borrowed power in the game? Oh yeah, there are. Way too damn many. Mists of Pandaria had the legendary capes. Warlords of Draenor had the garrison system along with the legendary rings. Legion began to really ramp things up with the artifact system, the Legion legendaries, and the Netherlight Crucible. BFA dumped onto its players the Azerite system, essences, corruption, and its own legendary cloak. Despite every single example I've just stated being completely reviled by players everywhere, Shadowlands is poised to provide even more borrowed power. We're about to have the Covenants, Conduits, and the Shadowlands legendaries. That's just patch 9.0, by the way. Who knows what else is coming? Why are there so many temporary systems that forcibly make our characters weaker at the start of each major expansion? Is it any coincidence that the first major step towards all this borrowed power was when the game also received its first stat squish? Welcome to Blizzard's solution to vertical progression. You see, vertical progression is the continual vertical growth that players make in games. You get more and more power, the gear keeps getting better and better each patch, and that beloved treadmill of getting new power every few months continues. However, there does exist a problem. A major one. Sometimes the power is too much. The vertical growth can get too big. Of course, the next question becomes, how big is too big? You have no idea how bad I wanted to make a joke from that line. Research shows that our brains can actually handle roughly around 5 to 6 digits worth of information. Beyond that, beyond numbers that are that large, our brain kind of tends to throw the rest of it away. So if we have something that's larger than 5 or 6 digits, a lot of that extraneous information is just kind of thrown out the brain. It doesn't really comprehend it or fathom it. And we can prove this actually with a pretty fun little mental exercise. Imagine this. Imagine 5 people in a room. It's easy, right? You can picture 5 people, you can picture 5 individual faces, no problem. Now try 50. Still pretty doable. You can picture 50 people, you can picture 50 individual bodies in an arena, not a problem. 500. It gets a little harder. It's really hard to think because a lot of you don't even really know 500 people, but you've been in a room, in a concert, in some sort of seminar where you've seen it. So you can really vividly picture it. Take 5,000. This is where it starts to get really hard. If you have 5,000 people in a room, in your mind, it gets really difficult to try to actually pick out 5,000 individual bodies and faces. It gets really, really hard. Now 50,000. It's practically impossible. Almost none of us can truly, in our minds, comprehend and create 50,000 individual, unique bodies, faces, and be able to point them out in our consciousness. It just won't happen. So 500K? Our body just throws it out. It doesn't matter. We picture like 5,000 and then the rest is thrown. What does this have to do with WoW, though? The best example that I can give you would be damage numbers. Let me ask you a question. Do you know how much damage your main abilities do in BFA right now? No? Good, because, me neither. I genuinely have no clue how much damage I'm doing at any given moment. Why? Well, Blizzard is attempting to solve the numbers problem with bloat. Mists of Pandaria and the End of Legion ended up giving us insanely high damage numbers to the point where most players completely lost a grasp of their character's raw performance. With Battle for Azeroth and yet another stat squish, Blizzard has now attempted to solve this problem differently. Instead of the insanely high values that MoP and Legion had, instead, Blizzard has added more sources of damage rather than increasing raw ability damage as much. So now instead of your Sinister Strike dealing 10k to start and 500k at the end of the expansion, instead now Sinister Strike will land for 100k, but it'll also proc 3 or 4 other effects, all dealing 100k damage. This way you get to the same growth, the numbers seem more manageable, there are just more of them. So does this actually solve the problem? No, of course not. That solution is stupid. The main reason I'm going through all these examples isn't to bore you and make you click off the video. I mean, it may have that effect, but I promise that wasn't the goal. What I'm trying to do is paint the larger design issue and present Blizzard's attempted solutions. They clearly haven't worked, and we can see a bit why from examples earlier on, but there's a much larger reason that Blizzard's attempts failed. They're not solving the real problem. Borrowed power is temporary. It buys Blizzard time to solve this real problem, or at least distract players from it. Borrowed power works exceptionally well in games like Path of Exile with its leagues. Each league provides some new system that essentially serves as borrowed power reward structures. The aggressive fresh start, cyclical solo play of an ARPG works well. In an MMORPG where the primary goal is player growth, well, borrowed power won't work if it takes away the growth that's core to that experience. I want to take a look at Guild Wars 2 for a moment, as that game is the industry leader when it comes to horizontal progression. There is a hard stat cap in the game. Yet 8 years later, and I'm still logging on regularly to do all the side content available because it's so addicting. However, despite having a hard cap on stats and focusing on horizontal growth instead of raw power gains, ArenaNet knows that borrowed power simply won't do the trick, since it still hurts the longevity of the play experience. ANET still goes for owned power. As Burya defines, quote, owned power is power that cannot be easily taken away. The major sources of owned power are resources, skills, personal relationships, and knowledge, end quote. Guild Wars 2 provides new expansions of pre-existing systems to handle player growth. Any new systems that are introduced are minimal in quantity and are designed to be iterated upon for years and years. For example, the Mastery system was introduced in Guild Wars 2 in order to add extra interactions in certain zones and specific content. Being able to bounce up mushrooms to get to higher places, or being able to use your glider more effectively, to being able to access conveniences that most games would actually charge you an in-game shop for. All of these masteries require loads of time and effort to unlock, which spins a new value from content that you may have already done. Then, when the new expansion Path of Fire was released and mounts were brought to the game, ArenaNet already had this mastery system in place in order to do some really cool stuff with mounts. So mounts in WoW are simply a ground mount, a flying mount, or one that can walk on water. There's basically nothing unique about them outside the fact that one can walk on water, which is also incredibly useful, but only when flying isn't introduced at the start of an expansion, because once you have flying, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant at that point. Guild Wars 2 has families of mounts. Raptors are fast and can leap long distances. This thumper rabbit Springer can jump really high vertically to reach new places. The skimmer can move over water exceptionally fast and can even go underwater. And there's more and more families to count. Even the griffin and the skyscale mounts, which are both flying, don't invalidate the others or themselves because of how much you have to master the flying mechanics. Sometimes moving on the ground is just more reliable or faster. The largest point here, outside Guild Wars 2 mount system completely destroying WoWs, is that all of these mounts also now can grow and become better due to the mastery system that has already existed in-game for years. When you add new simple systems on to simple pre-existing ones, you'd be surprised at how well the puzzle pieces tend to fit. Do examples like this exist in WoW though? Of course, actually. The new jewel crafting system introduced into the Burning Crusade was just an addition to the overall profession system. Mount equipment, as boring as hell as it is actually just an horizontal progression of the mount system, yet it does make mounts feel more powerful. Blizzard needs to change their philosophy about player power growth. Clearly, players don't like this status quo, yet Blizzard seems set on having massive increases every step of the way. Think about it this way. Blizzard's current model is to have a very narrow, very focused, and rapidly growing power pool. This is what gives us the need to have that stat squish so often. It's what makes damage numbers go bonkers. Blizzard needs to take a pinch from games like Guild Wars 2 or WildStar and Final Fantasy XIV. Learn to grow vertically slower, while also growing horizontally. By doing this, players can progress continually without progress being hyper-focused on player power. What if you could in fact earn high enough reputation with all of the Covenants to gain access to each of their abilities, but could only have one active at any given time? Perhaps you could only ever progress the story of your original choice on that character to still provide that initial decision more meaning. This provides new abilities to your class, a vertical growth, and also provides the ability to gain more choices via horizontal growth. Covenants are the new borrowed power, but principles from fixing them could shape Blizzard's understanding in seeing that owned power doesn't have to be this raw throughput every step of the way. Instead, just more choices. New professions or sub-professions, new talents for mounts. So many more ideas exist with owned horizontal power progression. The players seem pretty done with borrowed power, and so am I. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you made it here, wow, you are a dedicated person. Thank you. I tried a little bit of a different style with this video. I tried to maybe go a little bit deeper into the game design discussions and not just exposing game design problems, but also trying to present some sort of solution in order to make the game better as a whole. I find criticism to be very, very valuable, but it's only valuable if you can also then assist in its growth as well. That makes it even better, so I'm trying for that. If you liked this format and enjoyed it, please hit that like button below. If you did not like it and you thought it could be better, or there could be some things that I can change, or if it was just crap and I should throw it away like the conduit system, then please feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I appreciate that as well. Always trying to make better and cooler stuff for you all, so thank you. But again, happy gaming, enjoy, and have a good one. Bye-bye!